Okay, good evening. This is a work session of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow. I have an interesting agenda for us this evening, which is great. But before we get started, I just wanted to remind folks about these masks and to wear them and to social distance and to have your workplaces with these dividers and use this hand sanitizer and wash your hands and all this, and don't have big gatherings with a whole bunch of people that you don't know, or even a bunch of people you do know and haven't been around for a while. And why am I repeating this? Because there are 71 active cases in Sleepy Hollow right now. Or I should say at least 71 active virus cases in Sleepy Hollow right now. And that's as of 4 or 5 days ago. So it might actually be worse than that. So how much worse can it get? We could become one of those clusters. We could have more rigorous rules imposed on us. We could see some of our local businesses have to shut down or go backwards. So the progress that we've made over the summer, we could lose all of that. Those are the minor things compared to people can die. We all know, or we at least know people who know people in this community who have died because of this virus over the last several months. And that is what happens. You get more and more people get infected. Some of those people get really sick. Some of those people go to the hospital. Some of those people die. This is some serious stuff, and there's a wave going on across the country right now, and we can look at it and say, oh, it's all those, North Dakota, oh my gosh, well, guess what's going on there? It's happening right here again, okay? So we all have to be careful. This is not something that the village can do. I could get up here and say, well, we have a state of emergency that we ordered in the spring, and we changed some village codes, and through that order, I can say everybody is required to wear a mask all the time, everywhere, walking down the street and all that. None of it's going to work unless all of us do what we need to do. It's not going to work here. It's not going to work anywhere else in the country unless everybody gets behind this and works on it. So please, folks, let's not let it get any worse than it is now. And the other thing to keep in mind is, look, Thanksgiving is next week. It's my favorite holiday of the year. I love it. I am prepared to sit down with my wife and have the two of us have dinner together. And I would rather do that than run the risk of hurting others by accident. But obviously nobody's doing this on purpose, but you got to keep this stuff in mind, and especially this time of year. We're starting the really big holidays. You've got to keep this thing, we all have got to keep this thing under control. So please think of your kids, think of your grandparents, think of your children, other people's, your best friend, everybody. If you don't care about yourself, think about other folks. So, on that happy note, yes, I do try to keep a sense of humor even in the darkest of times. So, on that all too serious note, let us move on with our work this evening. And the first thing that we're going to be doing is having a discussion about a proposal to review, analyze, take a hard look at our Department of Public Works, which is something that we've been talking about doing for a while. And we have a proposal to consider. Mr. Dwyer, welcome to Village Hall. If you haven't been here before, if you have, welcome back.
Thank you, Mayor. I know I have, I just can't recall when.
Yeah, and I think village halls are pretty familiar to you through your decades of experience anyway. So why don't you tell us a bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure.
And where you came from. Skip the junior high and high school stuff. And we can begin that discussion about this proposal.
Well, thank you very much for the warm welcome. Good evening, everyone. As the mayor said, my name is Patricia Dwyer. I'm better known around here as Patty Dwyer. I have worked in Westchester County over the last 25 years as either a village manager or village administrator, most recently in Pleasantville, where I retired after 19 years. So I was your neighbor to the east for quite some time. Spent a lot of time in Sleepy Hollow as well. I currently live in Mount Pleasant, so I am still very local. I recently had the opportunity, post-retirement, to create a small consultancy called Source Municipal Solutions. I did that out of a desire to bring to municipalities, particularly in the downstate area, some consulting services from the point of view of a practitioner in the field. What I do is partner with subject matter experts that I've met along the way, and we resolve lots of issues for lots of folks and communities. We have public and private sector clients, none of which would conflict with any work that I may be doing here, so I will just say that. The goal is, as typically to find some breakthrough results for communities that have concerns about organizational capacity, about management techniques or management capacity. We analyze everything from their operating budgets to their programs and their, you name it, anything, regarding organizational assessments. So back in May, I was approached to discuss the opportunity to work with you and develop a proposal to put together a comprehensive assessment for the Department of Public Works, looking at the operational and organizational aspects of your department. And as I do frequently, I managed to work through a strategic partnership with CGR, the Center for Government Research. And with me tonight is Paul Bishop, a principal from CGR. Now, he and I have worked on many projects, some similar in scope and size to this, but I'd like Paul to just introduce himself for a minute, and you could gain an understanding of our synergies.
Thank you. And going back to junior high and high school, I had a memorable soccer game against Sleepy Hollow. I grew up in Somers, and then I went to Rochester some 30 years ago, where I studied at the U of R, and I live there these days. The Center for Governmental Research, or CGR, has been around for 105 years. We work with a variety of clients in the municipal field as well as nonprofits, and really my expertise is in the area of local governments of all different shapes and sizes. Everything from doing work, last week I was with Rockland County, helping them take a look at their budget, to working with small communities across New York State. In my 10 years with CGR, I've done work in about 25 of New York counties. The experience that would be relevant here is looking at shared services and identifying efficiencies inside departments, and taking a look at the operations and really trying to understand where you are today, what's working well, where are the challenges, and what are some of the options for going forward. Trying to identify best practices that we've seen in other communities and trying to help bring them here. Also identifying, your successes. What are your community expectations? Making sure that you are positioned to meet them going forward. We also often find challenges with succession planning inside an organization. So you may have a leader that you're very happy with, but they may be approaching the end of their career, or you want to make sure that you have inside your organization the right foundation for the next generation. So, as Patty said, we've worked together several occasions, and we'd be helping her look through the data, look through budgets, identifying best practices, as well as conducting interviews related to the project.
So, we understand that there would be a focus on operational improvements, but there's certainly undoubtedly a lot of strengths in the department right now. The department is functioning, it's doing work, whether or not it's actually taking credit to record that work and the time to get an understanding of the effort that it takes to get work and productivity done is something that we would like to examine further. We thought that, the goal of the project as we understood it was to really do a comprehensive look inside operational and organizational aspects of the Public Works Department, everything from the personnel, the capacity of those individuals to get their jobs done, their certifications, their roles, and their functions. We also want to look at the tasks at hand. It's an extraordinary amount of work that one department does. Public Works is probably the most, effective and noticeable, of all departments that provide public services. So when something is not done in a certain way or to certain expectations, it's very noticeable. We'd like to take a hard look at the span of control of the department to make sure that you have the right resources to get those jobs done. Sometimes it doesn't appear that, that those problems are really underlying. It could be a budget underlying issue, or it could be a manpower issue, but we would look at that in terms of the capacity of the department to get their work done. The methodology we would use here is that we would interview key officials and all the department staff and gain an understanding of their concerns related to this project and its effort. And we also think that, we'd like to survey employees about their roles and their understanding about their obligations as public servants and what their service values are, get an idea of why they're doing what they're doing for a living and what they like and don't like about it. We also want to look at the current organizational structure, take a good look at it to see how it models against others that are similarly sized for the responsibilities they have. You have a full-service public works department covering everything from sanitation to highway functions, managing rights-of-way, managing parks, etc. Paul and I were talking earlier about how we know there's going to be an overwhelming, amount of effort going into right-sizing your department when a lot of the developments that are currently before your community start to, take root, particularly Edge on Hudson, some of the other things that we're familiar with. The capacity of this village to be able to manage that needs to be scaled accordingly, and you need to be prepared for those eventualities, so we'd like to look at that. So we'd look at means and methods, from field observations and from interviews. We'd also talk to Anthony as the administrator to get an understanding of any concerns that he and the board might have about the department's capacity to handle its obligations. We'd like to benchmark some of the things that are going on with respect to best practices, look at your policies and procedures where they may need to be advanced or where they may need to be developed. We'll also look at regulatory compliance with respect to risk management to make sure that we have a pretty good understanding of how things are handled with respect to enterprise risk. And with respect to finances, we would certainly want to look at the management of your budget, any policies and procedures related to purchasing, how things are reported, how there's interdepartmental cooperation between the Department of Public Works and other agencies here. So I think we've concentrated on 5 key focus areas: risk management, technology, financial management, human resource management, and asset management. Those are the key areas of the study. We would look at what's happening now. We would make an assessment against what we know are best practices from the American Public Works Association and other standards, and see where we measure up. And then work with you.
I'm sorry, the Public Works Association? Is that what you said?
Yeah, yes, the APWA. They are probably the preeminent society in the United States for public works professionals. They have standards and everything from design to maintenance to operational standards. They offer training. They are one of they're sort of like the ICMA for municipal managers. But they put together, and they just issued their 10th edition of their manual, which is for public works professionals, and it covers over 500 policies. So it's very detailed. They also offer accreditation for departments, you know, to standardize themselves and to professionalize their departments. Covers everything from ethics, you know, to sidewalk design. So it's quite a valuable organization, and I would also send some information to you on that. Regardless, you know, I think it's something that you should take a look at for your department head. So we know a little bit about the department just from what we've seen, you know, publicly available. You know, we know there's about 27 employees full-time, lots of seasonal help, but you're managed with a general foreman as a head of a department, and you have several divisions, everything from water, sewer, sanitation. So we're familiar with that scope. In Pleasantville, it's almost like an identical twin. We have the same levels of service. Because of that, and one of the people we're bringing on board on our team, if we do get this assignment, is the former superintendent of public works for the village of Pleasantville, Mr. Steve Johnson, who has over 30 years' experience as a superintendent of public works. He's absolutely excited about the opportunity to come here and to assist in the study of, you know, the means and methods of how the department's operating. So I guess without further ado, we'll open up for some questions. If you have some questions for us about the particular nuances of the study or the proposal. I did prepare just a few slides. I think Anthony was kind enough to send those out, covering the focus areas that we're looking at. And
yeah, if you'd like to go through those, is that something you're going to throw up on the screen, or just? Yeah.
That's just the hard copy. Everybody else, they have to.
Oh, okay, good. I just want to make sure that our colleagues who are not physically with us are able to see those as well.
I have a question. Is there? Please. I didn't see it in the documents. Is there a proposed budget for the study yet?
There is a proposed budget, depending on, as we talked earlier, the scope and the methodology. We're thinking it's going to be we recommend a budget between $40,000 and $50,000. We think it's going to take about 4 months, you know, to get this done at least well, and do it in a way that we would like to have a lot of field observation. We think that's important. Unfortunately, with COVID, we know that things are changing, you know, but the more data you have available for us to do analytics on, and the more access we have to some of the key people here, you know, we think we can hold to that budget range.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, you did note the changes coming in the village, separate from COVID kind of thing, which hopefully is not something that's just going to be the new normal. We'll see where these vaccines go. But the village is going to have really dramatic changes, as you've noted, with the addition of Edge on Hudson. So in many, many ways. So there's certainly one of the things that we're concerned about is making sure that we serve this new residential community appropriately. And that we also, I think, size ourselves and start to make sure that we have enough people. And I think, I know we've talked about it somewhat. This is the first proposal we've had to actually, from someone like yourselves, to actually take a look at it and look at it with some analytical detail. But one of the things that we really want to make sure of is that we're properly positioned for that future. That we're not doing things in a way that makes sense now but won't make sense in a few years with new people on board. And you know, one of the places that I'm both excited about and concerned about, and I think the village is too, is we're getting literally acres of new parkland in the village, and that's really exciting. That's great. But we want to make sure that we take care of that as well. And right now we have the opportunity, fortunately for us, to actually fix, update some of our existing parks as well. And so there's this really great opportunity. We want to make sure that we maintain everything in the right way moving forward as well.
Mayor, so we're aware, Edge on Hudson, public roads, public sidewalks, everything is being dedicated
It will be.
to the village, okay.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing about when it will be. We want to make sure that they do everything they're supposed to do before we take on that responsibility, but that would be a normal thing with, I think, any small subdivision or very large project like this. But yes, that will all be public.
And 16 acres of parkland, something about.
Yeah.
Terrific.
What
That's
are you
terrific.
doing on those 16 acres?
We're requiring Edge on Hudson to create the park for us, and they have engaged, I have to say, an exceptional design firm, Nelson Bird Woltz, to do that. And they have presented the first phase of that design to the village and are moving now to gain approval through the planning board to begin the actual work. I think one of the things that's exciting for us is that if you drive down the street in the daytime and look at the development, you can see it's all on the backside of the property, closer to the Metro North tracks. And obviously the park is on the riverfront. They're going to be going ahead and working on the park, or at least the first half of it now, before any of those buildings are up next to the park. And that's really good for the folks that already live here. And obviously, I think it's good for them or people moving in. It looks less like a construction site and more like a place that people want to live. People want to live here anyway. The river's incredible, and it's a great village. But that is a special site. All the riverfront sites are really special because they're right on top of that great expanse of the Hudson. So that's a long answer to they're building the park for us, and we're staying on top of the process to make it sure that it's something that we want. And so far, the design has been great. It's been really terrific. So, there are some of the things that I'm kind of interested in, and I'd like your thoughts on it if you have or things you can share with us. We every year have a capital budget, and every year we try to get things that our department heads request. And this year we had, I have to say, very reasonable to our eyes and minds, very reasonable requests. And our DPW has a tendency to work machines through every last ounce of drop of blood, and to the extent that we're kind of like horrified that our people are having to work with some of this stuff. It's like, okay, yeah, we'll get you a new dump truck, since you can see the ground when you're driving from the inside of the cab through the floor. There's been some stuff like that. What we're concerned about is making sure that we're buying the right kinds of equipment for the future of the village. So over the last few years, as an example, this is a very long question, I know, sorry. Over the last few years, we've started doing things like buying smaller trucks to make sure that we can get up and down the older streets of the village, to pick up recycling and garbage and other kinds of things, and getting away from the older kind of style, somewhere between a pickup and a dump truck kind of space. And those have worked out really well, seem really great. I'm seeing things like electric-powered vehicles that aren't, smart cars. But the city of New York I understand, has started to deploy electric-powered garbage trucks and other sanitation equipment, which is pretty interesting that I didn't realize that that equipment was, that they had that kind of equipment already. And we've been trying to, where we can, make some of those changes. You guys have any thoughts about that kind of equipment? That's really cool, but it's a little early for somebody like us to adopt, or...
You know, I can tell you that it's not too early. There's plenty of places where those things are being deployed. The difference is really the capacity to maintain that equipment. I think that's always the concern. There are just different, obviously, mechanical considerations, and if you don't have the staff to be able to deal with that and these systems go down, it's a problem. But there are a number of places in the Northeast that are using different types of equipment that, particularly in small villages where your speed limits are, what they are, and, you're burning gas and idling and everything else. If you could go electric, that would be really a very good thing to do, to go green and reduce your carbon footprint to the extent you can do that. I don't know if Public Works equipment is really, we could do a little research on that in terms of the reliability of it, what kind of, probable usefulness you're going to get out of that, because I don't think they're any cheaper. You're still looking at $250,000 probably for a sanitation truck, and, those types of numbers are still real. So you're going to want to make sure you're going to get useful life out of those assets. And then weigh that against, the environmental impacts and the benefits that you're looking to get, because that's your trade-off. But I don't have any. I have not any personal experience with them. The most interesting thing I'd ever seen was years ago out in California, because they do everything first out on the West Coast. And I had seen the single-arm sanitation truck come down the street, the driver just driving and the arm come off the truck and pick up the can and dump it in. And I was fascinated by that. And I was in Mountain View, California, and it was so easy for them because it was a very flat place. You would never be able to do that in any of our hilly, towns and villages here, because the truck just wouldn't be able to angle itself. But there are some wonderful technologies out there, and if you're one of the areas of focus that we would look at is, the use of technologies here in your Public Works Department. What may be of interest, what may be applicable, and particularly what you're using now, what types of IT you're using for workflow, what types of content management systems you may be using, if you're using any asset management systems that can help you decide when life cycles have expired and things need to be turned over, how well you're keeping those maintenance records to make sure that you're tracking costs so you know how much you're spending on your repairs, and when you get to that break-even point when you want to salvage something so you still have something of value and you don't just junk your trucks at the end, and take them to, a salvage yard. So, those are the things we'll help you look at.
We have actually started moving towards some of those newer. We do use in 2 neighborhoods where the streets are wide enough and flat enough to, we use the single driver with the mechanical arm.
Oh, terrific.
And it's pretty fun to, when you first see it. I'm sure you saw the same thing, but some guy, boom, bang. Instead of the standard 2 guys on the back. And one of the things that led us to do that, frankly, was looking at some of the other parts of, some of the other costs on the department. And that's what I'm really looking for in a good study. I mean, we were just on our own kind of looking at it, what was happening when people would get injured because somebody puts a bunch of rocks in the garbage can and some guy picks it up or tries to, and then you have somebody out for a while, and then you have overtime because somebody's out, and you have all of these other that don't have anything to do with the truck itself, but have to do with the most important part, and that's our employees. And so it looked like an opportunity to have less people on a truck, but also cut down on some of those injuries that happened. And it's those kind of things are exciting to us as well.
Oh.
And the ability to deploy people other places, because need so many people there.
Yeah, Mayor, you're touching on risk management issues too, and they're very important, for people to, be able to understand, when you lose employees, you lose critical assets, and then, the entire operation suffers. So you want people to understand that, if you could use some smart systems where, you're minimizing people's risk of injury, personal injury on the job, that's very important. So we would look at that. We'd look at the latest technologies available and, give you some advice as to what you may be able, to work into your long-range plans.
And we just updated our comprehensive plan as well, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I had a couple of things, but
Please.
it did touch on everything, and I appreciate that. The future was important to me on twofold, certainly on the capital investment and how far it would really go out. The other thing is while it's not part of this proposal, I think it really does set us up for success with building our DPW, because that's a whole nother facet. So we have to understand the inventory, we have to understand what the future equipment looks like, to determine what that layout would really look at. And, I really defer to probably getting an update as to kind of where we are in terms of timing, because it's going to be, you're saying 4 to 5 months, it would be really interesting to kind of back into when our work is done on the commons to be able to say, okay, here would be our benchmark of when we would even want to break ground, and then what do we need to back into that? Because then that is also going to be another cost association. And they really should in some way, from a budget and being fiscally responsible, try to align a little bit, so that if you're making a proposal on certain things that we need to do and identify, and I know it's a lot about an organizational structure, but there's things that are on the heels of that.
Oh, absolutely.
That would then help with our structural, building and what that would look like. So I want to keep that in mind too, because that's going to be a pretty critical, I don't know if I'm right to do that, but if I'm going in the right direction, that's really important for me, is to understand for the DPWS what we're looking at.
Yes, yeah, and Paul and I had a brief conversation about that too. We know you're getting a new facility. We know that investment is significant, but we also know that what we need to do here, if we do get this work, is to do a blueprint that's scalable for you. So when we tell you that these are the things and these categories of key focus areas that you need, these are foundational, and then you just build on that depending on the size of the operation. But these will be all of your foundational things that the department seems to really want to have now.
Yes.
So they know that they're, that they have confidence that they have the right tools to do their job, and they have the right, capacity, and they have, the budgets.
Absolutely.
So, and the equipment. So that's kind of where, we see.
I mean, we're in such a great situation for that.
You are,
Because we can not only start with a white piece of paper, but then we can actually build what we're looking for. Financial constraints all considered, but the fact that we can do that, but it is still a very strategic conversation of how those two work together, and we don't want that to be missed.
Your existing facility is it back to back with Tarrytown's facility? Is it close to Tarrytown's facility?
Close.
Okay, but you're not combining facilities. Okay.
No, those kind of discussions have never gotten very far.
Okay.
The very short version is, it's like they would be very happy if we built a new DPW facility and they were allowed to use it, as long as we paid for building the whole thing and they get to use it.
Mr.
Seems fair.
Slingerland.
Yeah.
I hate to call
So-
Mr. Slingerland about that.
That's
not-
where the conversation doesn't, kind of,
I
don't pick it
understand.
back up again, so.
But how far are you along with that planning process? You're in design or you're in development?
We're not in design.
Okay.
We're in the process of, if you look at former East Parcel, the common, as we've redubbed it, we're building a new platform, quite literally, building up the soil so that our DPW will be out of harm's way. We almost went
Okay.
under a couple of times with the storms, and if the storm activity continues, it will be underwater at some point. So we're moving it out of the way. We're rezoning that piece of the waterfront, and we expect to have new activity there. But right now we're in the process of completing the fill necessary to create that the higher level. Then we'll have to let it sit for a while, and so that before we can build on it. So if things went really, really well, we could probably, and we had a really fast design process, we could start at the end of, say, next year,
Good.
calendar year, at the earliest. So it's very soon in terms of the way villages work, the way government works, as opposed to the normal process. Yeah, we're going to break ground in 2025. It's right around the corner. But it's soon, and we want to get that.
That's
Underway.
it's a great capital asset. I mean, it's a game changer getting a new facility for Public Works. It really is, because
And it's an opportunity for us to upgrade, a big upgrade of our existing facility, which was built decades ago. It incorporates buildings that weren't intended to be part of the facility, but it's what we had, and our folks have made do for a long time. It's undersized. We haven't been able to keep all of our equipment there for at least 20 years, I'm guessing. It's certainly in the entire time I've been on the board, it's been undersized. So there's another big exciting thing that's coming up for us as well.
So I just have one more question. Is there a trustee liaison to different departments here? Do you set up your structure that way as a board? Do you have particular liaison responsibilities, or?
No, that was something that we did years ago. And what we've moved to is almost ad hoc committees or with a board representative to work on projects. So it's what we did with our comprehensive plan. The lead was taken by trustees to work with folks throughout our community and with the consultants that helped us put it together. And we found that works really well.
Yeah.
So that when you finish, there isn't still a liaison and the job is over, and the liaison has to find something else to do when the job is over. So it's like, let's focus on a particular project and get that done. And different folks on the board have stepped up on the different pieces and are doing that now. And that's the approach that we would continue to take.
Yeah, I think that's preferable. We would love to talk to everybody on the board, but some communities just channel to one or two, trustees. So we just want to be sure that if, we would know, who would be participating in.
And then it'd be interesting because there'd be some overlap, and we'd all probably say some things the same, and otherwise it's the blind men describing the elephant.
Yeah.
It's any questions from our colleagues who've joined us online, who've been with us online? Not hearing them. Okay.
Looking forward to chatting with you.
I'm sorry?
Looking forward to chatting.
Okay. Yes. John, get a different light. Whoa.
Thank you.
He's got it.
It's very Sleepy Hollow.
I did have some support on the lighting tonight.
Looks like a halo.
Is that what I was gonna say? Is that a halo?
It looks like a halo.
I'm not so sure about the halo part of it, but it's supernatural anyway. It's very Sleepy Hollow.
It's nice to,
Yeah, right?
meet all of you in this strange, brave new world that we're in.
Yeah. If there aren't any additional questions from the board, I want to thank you for your presentation.
It's our pleasure.
We need some time to collectively talk about this and absorb it, and we'll get back to you.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you for the
Thank you.
opportunity to be
Thank you.
here.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Nice to meet you
coming
all.
in.
Happy Thanksgiving,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you too.
Nice meeting
You
you.
as well.
Thank you.
Be safe.
Will do. Thank you.
I want everybody to be around for another one next year.
So Ken, before we move forward, I can tell you that for those of us participating remotely, very difficult to hear. So if we can either get the speakers closer to a microphone, or if there's some other adjustment we can make, because right now it's very hard to follow the conversation.
Okay, we're using a new mic setup that may need some tweaks, so we'll work with that. Certainly with the trustees, everybody's got a microphone in front of them, and you guys can just lean into it and help Glenn and Sam and John.
I don't
Okay.
know that they're hearing through our microphone. I think it's just through the laptop, right?
Sam, do you have any problems hearing?
Yeah, she
Do you
did
have
an
problems
announcement.
hearing us?
Yeah.
John too, I'm sure.
And what about, but Michael says that you guys are hearing us through our mics.
Are you hearing us right now?
Hey Ken, we're hearing everything through Anthony's laptop mic, and that's it. So when the gentleman was speaking, we could hear him clearly. When the lady was speaking, we could not hear her. And when the laptop was turned towards the woman, we couldn't really hear board members speaking. If Michael put an audio feed monitor in front of the laptop, people who are tuning in remotely would be able to hear the audio. We don't really need to see the video, but the audio is more important. Otherwise, it's. I almost went to the village meeting website, the Sleepy Hollow website, to listen because I couldn't understand what she was saying.
And that's what I've done in the past, is gone to the website.
Yeah.
When I was listening remotely, there's a little bit of a delay, but you can hear.
So she was a little bit more soft-spoken, and she was talking through a mask. That could be why it was a little bit.
Yeah. Well, this is a good segue into our next discussion item, which is we've had a number of requests or repeated requests from, I guess the right way to say, repeated requests from a few people to allow public participation in our meetings via Zoom. And I, for one, have been reluctant because it's clunky having these, I think is a kind word for this. It's clunky doing these kind of hybrid meetings where some of us are here physically in the room and some of us are not. And what I thought might be a way to kind of put off that particular discussion would be to just say, why don't we, if we're going to be doing this kind of hybrid thing, why don't we just go back to having a straight up Zoom meeting? Everybody's sitting in front of their computer or their phone, and then we don't have these issues, and that also would have the effect of allowing people who've requested the ability to address the board while not being physically in the room, they would have the opportunity to do so. One of the reasons I brought it up is we're heading into a period where we are in a time when we're required under the state rules not to have more than 10 people in a group in a private meeting, in a private home, or so I don't believe that applies to us as a board. And we've obviously taken precautions to both distance ourselves from folks who may be in the audience. But in a regular board meeting, we often have, or almost always have, at least 10 people, and sometimes a lot more than that. So if we were using that as kind of a rough guideline, it's like, well, you're really not supposed to have more than 10. And we're heading into this kind of deepening of the virus, the number of cases is going up. It might be just a way to do this and make it simpler.
Agreed.
So that was a long preamble, but
Yeah.
don't say ditto.
No, it's good. I think that's a good idea.
It just,
It's too hard doing the hybrid.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I prefer being in the room with each other because I like to see, I get a better sense of the body language of folks. I think it flows a little bit better. I really like that more, but if we're going to have, continue to have these kinds of meetings like this, we just constantly have these problems. Like, you guys can't hear stuff. The woman, Patty, who was addressing us is trying to be careful, and she has a mask on, and there's that kind of thing that goes through. You can hear sort of, and you kind of not, and
I'm in agreement too, especially following the governor's orders and just taking the precautions.
what I would suggest to everybody, and I suggested this earlier today, is that we just say, okay, look, starting next week, let's do Zoom. It's kind of like, well, we know it works. I don't think it's good enough, but so thoughts? You guys are participating that way anyway, so.
Yeah, not only does it work, but it makes the meetings accessible to residents who can now participate remotely, as opposed to coming into Village Hall, which, as we know, many are reluctant to do that for safety reasons. So if we can all participate via Zoom, and we can welcome residents to offer comments and speak to the board, I think it's a win-win.
I agree with Glenn.
One of the other options that we have that Zoom offers is something called Zoom Webinar. And the difference between a regular Zoom call and Zoom Webinar is that when the audience is viewing it, they can't verbally participate, but they can definitely send in questions via chat. So I know one of the concerns that we had was, a lot of interruptions and hearing people on the calls and that kind of thing. So there is a way around that if we need to pursue that route. But it's just a matter of buying a different service from Zoom.
I think, we've successfully had some meetings with a number of people dialing in, and we mute everybody, and then when you're recognized to speak, we unmute them, and when they're done, we shut them back down again. And that gives us the opportunity, if somebody has been, as my father-in-law used to say, in his cups, then we can just cut them off right away. It means if they're drunk. It's an old phrase. But we can cut them off. Or if somebody's unruly, or they're they're not being civil in their language, or any of the other things that we think are inappropriate in a business meeting, we have an opportunity to stop that. And that's a pretty straightforward part of it. So can we, I'm somewhat reluctant. I think Denise shares that reluctance. But it seems like this is going to be an easier way to make this work and function better. So what I would say is, okay, we're not going to be here next Tuesday. I'll see you all online at 7 o'clock. We send out the invitation, we make it open for folks, and we have our presentations, whatever they may be, will also be done that way. I think anybody who's going to present at this point, at this point of this year in November, everybody has been on a WebEx or a Zoom or whatever. So it should be relatively easy to do. Okay?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, start Tuesday. Michael will run it through so that the folks who, those of you who are watching this live right now at home, it's still going to come through at the normal time. Right, Michael?
Yeah, we've been doing this for
Yeah.
5 months.
Yeah, okay. I just want to reassure people that we're not cutting them off in any way. The folks that are, think back to what it was like in July or June, and it's going to be like that again. So, okay. Next up on our agenda is we had a public hearing on a request to have a 15-minute parking zone on Cortlandt Street. And the public hearing was closed as of 5 o'clock this afternoon. So let me ask Mr. Giacchio if we got any additional comments on the matter of the public hearing?
We have not.
Okay. I thought it was a pretty straightforward request. So the public hearing is closed. It was from a business owner to have that. And Mr. Giacchio, the hours of the 15-minute, or roughly, or exactly?
We had posted it at 8 to 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And I think to give a little more flexibility.
And where we do have that now, do we have it for that many hours?
We just go to 6.
8 to 6?
Yeah.
Okay.
Chief, you remember? Yeah.
8 to 6? What's your preference, folks? I just soon, I didn't think there was any objection from the board.
Personally, I think we should move forward with it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Then we need a resolution to do that. And we would need a special session to do that, or we can just do it next week when we have a regular board meeting. I would think it would be, we can wait until then. So I'll put it on for Tuesday.
Yep.
Everybody good for that? All right. Great. We have a zoning proposal. I'm going to ask Trustee Spiro to walk us through that.
Yes, as a follow-up to the last business update, there was a meeting just this past week with Anthony and myself and Sean, and that was the follow-up to getting everybody kind of engaged and enrolled that would be on the committee. So we've identified every single area. The only other open spot right now, we were talking a little bit about zoning and who would be that representative, and having some further discussion on that, because you want to have somebody from zoning just participating in on that. So we felt prepared enough to be able to say that we've identified the committee. We see that the scope of the project is well suited for what we want to do for phase 1, which is really zeroing in on the inner village in totality is really what it comes down to be. The second phase is completely separate about that. But one of the things that I just want to be mindful of, because I know the project scope does talk about parking in particular, and what we touched upon is that parking is more of an output or a tactic of conversations about the things that you need in terms of services, which will then drive parking. So we want to be careful that we don't, and this is my point of view, I want to be very mindful of not creating camps of parking, good parking, bad parking, what parking, which parking, how, because then you're never, that's where we kind of have, in our past, gotten stuck in the mud a little bit. So we're at a tipping point right now where we can really identify what it is that we need from the services and what we're looking and examining, and then what do we need to do for parking to deliver that result. And that was one of the things that we had a little bit of a further conversation, but it's not that we fleshed it out, but we want to make sure that we give it an appropriate understanding of what that means. And it's really for the committee to then flesh it out and really put it into the different camps. So we're paying attention to that nuance, and I think it's just something to be mindful of. And then other than that, just really looking through it again one last time with Anthony, and I feel really confident that we'll end up with something that we as a board can really review and understand, and putting some things together for zoning to change. And and if you think about it, on top of what we have in floating zones, we've done so many positive things that are right now kind of compartmentalized with what we've done, and they're sitting in the parking lot. And this is the last piece that will really pull it all together and really put things in action. And I think that's what we're all looking for, you know, residents and department heads included, so. That's the update, and really what we have to do is have to put it on for a resolution for approval to get the project started. So if anybody has any questions.
To engage these folks.
To engage these folks, exactly. And as we identified, it's about $30,000. Any questions, anything that you'd like to further understand before moving forward?
I think they did a great job with the proposal. The project scope is
Yes.
good. Their work has always been good. Everything they've done for us has been excellent. And with Susan taking the lead on the project, I have great confidence we'll get value out of it.
Yes,
She's outstanding. And thanks, Sandra, for working with us.
absolutely. It's exciting to see something come to fruition from it, so it's good. Cool. So if you're in agreement, I'd like to propose that we do
Absolutely.
that.
I think it sounds great. I'm on board with all of this.
So we'll put this on for approval for our board meeting next week. Sorry, guys, I keep on looking at the screen over on the side over here to see you, and then, but if I'm gonna look you in the eye, I have to look straight ahead, so, all right. We'll put this on and we'll ask for that aye vote next Tuesday. We'll move on to another discussion item. That's the Route 9 transportation study, and I'm gonna ask Trustee Gebler to take the lead on that, as she has been.
Absolutely. So I sent out the link to everybody to the study and asked for comments, and I did get comments back from the board, which was wonderful. Thank you. And so basically what we're here to discuss tonight is the possible resolution of, you know, recognizing the study, and then even kind of honing in on some of the things that we feel are really beneficial to our village in particular, because it does cover many villages. And so, you know, I'll start with, you know, something that I think is really beneficial about the study is when they're looking at the intersections in our village with Route 9 and our streets, and looking at, in particular for me, the crosswalks, the pedestrian safety, because I think about the kids walking to school, our residents, and then also tourists who are coming through. So I really like, you know, that piece of the study in particular. And, you know, I also thought that, you know, sidewalk between, what is it, Bellwood and the hospital seemed really interesting. I do see people walking on Route 9 now. There's no sidewalk there, and it's pretty dangerous. You know, there's been definitely improvements on Route 9 with the lane changes, which have been wonderful. But, you know, there's still room for improvement. So really, I just wanted to open up to you guys if you had any other discussion points and, you know, how you want to move forward.
I had circulated a draft resolution, or rather I forwarded it to Rochelle, of something that I would be willing to approve. So what I would say is in order to move this to a conclusion, we could adopt that resolution next Tuesday, or between now and then, folks who want something different can circulate that, and we can revisit it on Tuesday. So what I think might be helpful, Michelle, what do you think? We'll put that resolution up
Sure. Yeah.
for Tuesday.
Yeah.
And
I think if everybody's seen it.
You know, everybody take another look, and you're good with it?
Yeah,
You're not?
I'm good with it.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Oh,
Okay.
sure. Thanks, Ken. Take care.
All right, so we'll put it on and then vote it up or down then.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds great. Thank you,
Cool.
guys.
That concludes our agenda. For the members of the board, there's a couple of personnel matters that we need to discuss, and some legal matters. And there are some other folks that we need to bring into those discussions. So I'm going to reach out to you to see about scheduling some other times that we could meet via conference call or whatever in executive session. We will post those so that the public will know that we're meeting as a board, even though we're not physically together, but it will be an executive session and because it is the items we need to discuss are legal matters. So I just wanted to, since I have everybody together, I wanted to let everybody know I'll be reaching out to you and we'll schedule some stuff. And that for the folks and for our viewing audience and our audience in the room, just to let everybody know that we will, of course, post those meeting times as well.
Excellent.
Okay?
I just want to tell John that he has a Kit Kat on his desk, and it's mine. So,
Mr. Levy?
sorry you weren't here, but your Kit Kat is mine.
Trustee Levy, did you catch that?
What's that?
There's a Kit Kat on your desk, and it's mine now.
The candy?
Yeah.
Sam,
You have, under the new rules of the Board of Trustees, the unpublished rules, you have forfeited your right.
And Sandra and I are going to fight over Sam's Kit Kat.
Sam, yours
Yeah.
is going to be, split in half. So, all right, that
Somebody
concludes.
brought up the Kit Kats, I'm gonna bring up the pumpkins. Those are great that are in front of UCAN on the floor.
Yes.
It's obvious that we don't have squirrels at Village Hall.
You know, all we have to do is put those.
Look that good in weeks.
Yeah. All we have to do is put those outside, and the squirrels will take care
Yeah,
of
they'll
them.
be gone.
I've been watching them, and I have this bad feeling it's going to be a tough winter. So.
There's no acorns, that's fine.
All right, that concludes our business for the evening. Thank you all. Be well and be safe.
All right.
Good night.
Good night, everybody. Bye,
Good night.
guys.
Hey, guys.